We start by a river as a washed up Australian washes up on the banks, after previously getting mortally wounded and falling over a bridge at the end of the first movie. He's then taken to hospital, where he of course miraculously survives because plot armour, bro, and then spends the next 9 months coming back from the brink of death by the power of montage. Though he's still being all depressed and shit, despite having saved that specky kid what got kidnapped by soy boy Pablo Escobar cosplayer only a few months earlier, so he should probably just cheer up already. Meanwhile, over in Georgia, local gangster boss Zurab hears that the governor recently extended his brother's jail sentence by 10 years, so naturally shoves a rake in his face and buries him out in the yard. Speaking of rusty tools, that Tyler Rake fella is taken to a remote cabin in Austria to totally retire from being a badass merc and also doing a bunch of bad things but for good reasons. And he spends a few more weeks recovering and watching TV with his chickens and shit. Elsewhere, Zainab's brother David has moved his wife and 2 kids into prison with him, given he seems to have that much power, yet not quite enough to not be in prison in the first place. Anyway, he smacks up his floozy called Ketavan and then leaves, whilst her teenage son Sandro asks if she's okay, and then says he wants to be just like his dad when he grows up, which totally makes her butthole wince. Cause I guess there just aren't enough raging misogynists in the world these days. Bruh. Anyway, back at the cabin, Rake finds a British bloke what looks and acts exactly like that DCI John Luther dude from the eponymous BBC show, who's just chilling on his porch, and eventually asks Tyler to extract his own ex-wife's sister and her family from the fortified prison, and says the 2 brothers he's going to be up against are hardened legends of Georgia, who'll be super pissed when they find out he's taking their family and are also super hard to kill. And worse, there's also 2 warring gangs inside the prison that are just chomping at the bit to chomp chunks out of each other and shit. So good luck with it all, bro. So the still depressed Australian, what's bored out of his mind having to watch TV with a flock of poultry, phones his handler Nick to help him out with a job, and she brings her little brother Yaz along for shits and giggles. After 6 weeks of more montagey training, this Tyler Rake fella, what loves extracting people for a living, totally infiltrates a prison, and quickly finds Ketavan and her kids, what are technically his nieces and nephews, and begins trying to extract them without waking up that deranged David fella. Naturally, the little girl drops her teddy and totally wakes up her dad, who then wakes up the rest of the prison, causing all hell to break loose, as Tyler has to fight his way through the various levels all in one take, because this director fucking hates filming scenes in the traditional way and can't bear to cut away even for 1 second, and they soon find themselves in the bowels of the pen, where he sends the kids up to Nick and the good guys but soon gets attacked by a demented David before he and Ket can escape. After a vicious one-take fight scene in which the legendary boss smacks up his wife again, Rake kills the raging misogynist and Ket gives him a smack back for good measure. But they're soon forced to find an alternate route to do that extraction thing, and end up fighting their way through a giant fuck-off prison riot between the 2 warring gangs. And before you can say, someone's been watching too much of the raid too, they finally manage to meet up with Nick and Yaz as the remaining brothers' gangster army chase them through the woods, with the director showing off even more fancy camera moves. After the little girl is injured during the shootout, they take cover on a train and have to fend off even more naughty bad guys, and this time in choppers and shit. And even little Nikki gets a chance to get her hands dirty, and promptly beats the living daylights out of 2 grown men clad in heavy armour because stunning and brave feminism, bro. Once all the baddies are cleared out, the pair soon realise that the train has no brakes, and so they promptly strap themselves in, before the bloke who was just on death's door 9 months ago is thrown around the carriage like a friggin' ragdoll. Gah, this fella just can't catch a break. Later, the baddies totally regroup and wonder what the heck just happened, because they can't believe their leader and one half of the legendary Georgian brothers just got taken out by a mopey Australian what lives with chickens. Bruh. Meanwhile, Sandro is super sad and mad when he realises that his uncle Tyler killed his misogynist daddy, whilst David pounds the corpse of his brother and swears bloody revenge and shit. Elsewhere, the good guys get the heck out of Dodge on a private jet, where Nick finally catches on to the fact that Tyler used to be married to Ket's sister Mia, who was totally the mother of his 6-year-old son, who he walked out on to go fight the Taliban whilst the little one was dying of cancer.
Oh shit, not good.
But off in the back room, That super sad and mad Sandro kid nicks Yaz's phone and totally calls up his legendary uncle. And before you can say, how the heck did he get into a highly encrypted tactical cell phone and also manually remember his uncle's private phone number when they've all been in prison for the past few months? He convinces the boy that it was his mum who ordered his dad to be killed like a total chump. And so he tells them all where they're heading to like a right little grass. Later, they arrive at the safe house atop a skyscraper in Vienna, where Sandro confronts Tyler about his mum setting them up. But Rake just tells him he's a brainwashed Mogadon, and his uncle is manipulating him worse than the mainstream TV news channel. Naturally, Sandro is more confused than ever, but they eventually bond a little when Tyler talks about how his dead son used to play with Sandro on the beach when they were kids. And so the ungrateful scrote starts to feel proper guilty about ratting out the only people trying to help his family keep doing that living thing, and the team are soon under attack from both above and below. As they prepare to get down to the garage, Ketavan catches her son again ratting them out on the phone, cause this kid's character motivations are less consistent than my stools on Taco Bell night. And Sandro now wants to go off with his uncle Zainab again because reasons. Anyway, after the penthouse is shot up and an elite mercenary team land on the roof, they hot-tail it down to the garage and go to drive off. But that Sandro dickhead runs to find his legendary uncle. So Yaz runs after him as Nick and Rake try to protect the girls from getting deaded. Then Zainab convinces Sandro to stop being a pussy-hole and join his team already. And Nick helpfully provides backup to her little bro by getting herself shot up. Go! Luckily, Yaz is out here lobbing frags like he's activated the unlimited ammo cheat code. And Tyler tells the two to stop pissing about and get up to the roof, so they can totally secure the enemy chopper for an improvised extraction, while Zainab pursues Rake up through the tower. Nick then does some more girl power action scenes and single-handedly secures the LZ, whilst Yaz is busy exchanging shots with a giant female tank bird boss. That's when Nick and their last elite thug fall over the edge of the roof, and it looks like it's curtains for the tiny lass what can somehow smack up men twice the size of her because reasons. But Rake laughably saves her, in the most implausible rescue scene since that time Paul Walker ran up the roof of a bus in Fast 7 to grab hold of Letty's rear. Or when Dom crashes his car into a bridge to propel himself across a small gap to catch Letty midair in Fast and Furious 6. Or literally any of the ludicrous Fast and Furious films, I suppose. And the pair end up dangling over the side like total goners. Especially when Zainab turns up and randomly shoots his mortal enemy in the hand instead of his head because again, plot armour and shit. But luckily, Nick wakes up and shoots the glass out from under that naughty legend, whilst Tyler struggles to hold both his own weight and that of a small woman with nothing but his left hand while there's a giant gaping hole in it. So naturally, he flings her back inside somehow and then hauls himself up also somehow, where Rake promptly fends off the baddie and heads up to the roof, as Nick gets everyone to the chopper except her injured brother who's hobbling behind. And because he's now turned off the bandana skull, he's all out of frags, so proceeds to get shot up yet again before getting temporarily rescued by Rake, but then totally unrescued when poor Yaz dies in his arms. Aww. Now returned to the cabin, Tyler's ex-wife Mia arrives to reunite with her sister and niece, but her reception to Tyler is more frigid than a nun's clunge. And also the rather gorgeous snowfall all around. And although her grumpy ex-hubby eventually apologises for walking out on their dying kid just to go shoot up blokes in turbans halfway across the world, she just says, "I've had enough of your pussy-hole excuses, so shut up about it already." Anyway, Tyler then gets a call from Zainab telling him to come to the local airfield if he wants a chance to get that boy back what keeps ratting him out and betraying his own friends and family. So Rake tells Nick to get the girls out of the country whilst he heads off their final showdown. Because if they're ever caught, they'll all be put in prison because reasons. So he's totally going to do this one solo. Which he totally does, and proceeds to take out most of the bad guys' goons laughably easily. And mostly with a friggin' overpowered grenade launcher. And soon follows Zainab into a church, where this naughty fella has totally strapped a giant bomb to his own nephew. Damn! Anyway, he tells Sandro to take the gun off that miserable Aussie bloke and put him out of his misery. And despite spending the entire film craving vengeance for the death of his misogynist daddy, he now can't seem to do it when he's presented with a golden opportunity to do so, again because reasons. And because he's a massive cuck, I guess. But before Zainab can do it himself, that Nikki bird busts in wanting revenge herself for the death of her little bro, what seemed to run out of frags just at the wrong time. And is so useless that she immediately disarms herself when he takes that boy as a human shield. But luckily, said human shield fella suddenly decides to finally grow some balls out of nowhere and totally distracts the baddie just long enough to escape his grasp. But poor Nick gets shot up again just before Tyler can take him down. Which he totally does after a pretty brutal final fight sequence, and he finally ends the legend of the secondary legendary brother by carving him up like a common hog and blowing his noggin off. Huzzah! Rake then gives a forgiving nod to that curly-haired soy boy with a long history of selling people out, but unfortunately, the local filth soon swarm the gaff and the pair end up in prison, because the local cops totally reckon that good guys doing bad things but for good reasons just ain't fucking on, son. Mia then tells her ex-hubby that they're all now in witness protection, and Tyler says he has $1 million dues in cash under his cabin floorboards that they can totally help themselves to.
Nice.
She then tells him that his dying son was totally proud of his dad for being brave and shooting up smelly blokes in turbans halfway across the world because reasons, which totally helps to heal his heart, and maybe might finally stop him from being so bloody depressed all the time. I mean, the guy's a fucking millionaire apparently. Anyway, he's then taken out of jail to meet back up with DCI John Luther. I mean, a 6'2" British black guy what looks and acts exactly like DCI John Luther, but is apparently not the same bloke from the eponymous BBC show, who tells Tyler that he can totally bust him and Nick out if they agree to do a job for him. And before he can say, well, as long as it doesn't involve saving a third scrawny soy boy with daddy issues in under a year, the phony fakey DCI John Luther bloke says he works for a quote, gnarly motherfucker, and you're gonna totally love him, son. And we end on Tyler's curious and eager face, as the actor clearly hears dollar signs in his head whilst the filmmakers basically line up the hook for Extraction 3. And that's it. That's the movie. Though my favourite part was when some fella was totally murked again with a rake, which seems to be a running joke now, so I for one can't wait to see who's going to get yeeted with a garden tool in the third flick in a few years. But anyway, that's the plot and that's your lot. Consider ringing that bell thing so you don't miss any future recaps. Tell me if you like this flick in the comments if you have time, and I'll see you in the next one.